Donald Trump has lost his mind. He has now gone to war with the ghost of Ronald Reagan and with the absolutely rest of us. So, the good news for our Monday morning is that Donald Trump is losing support from his base and from everybody else, and he knows it. But this is a bit of a Zen kind of story. There's some good news followed by bad news. So here's the good news. Let's take a look at this chart. Donald Trump's net approval rating is sinking. And if you can see these numbers right here, my friends, you can see that every single category on this Reuters Ipsos poll shows Donald Trump underwater. Every single category. So he's doing the best on crime, where his net approval rating is only, get this, -3%. But let's start at the bottom. What is he mostly underwater on? He has a -37% approval rating on the Jeff Epstein files. You heard that, Jeff Epstein. This is not going away. It's not. Then you look above that. The next category, -31 net approval rating on inflation and rising prices. People go to the store. They see that their prices, I see that my prices are up. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent can go on the Sunday shows and claim that people are cherry picking when they say things like coffee and bacon and all the basic things that people buy are up. So, Mr. I'm going to lower your prices. I love grocery. That was his top priority, he said. And he is -31 at that. Next to that, cost of living, -30%. And it goes on and on. So even immigration, he is at -6%. So I would just encourage everybody, at least on that front, to think this is good. But of course, as I said, this is a little bit Zen, because it may be good that he's losing support, but he knows it. Even when Donald Trump is in denial, he always worries about his approval rating. And if he is ignoring it, the people around him know. And so what does that mean? What does it mean when he realizes he might be losing support? It means that he steps up aggressive action, as does his team, to try to get as much done as fast as he can right now, and to continue to act as if he is not a lame duck president. This is Donald Trump's last term under our U.S. Constitution, period. And you may have Steve Bannon and these other yahoos claiming that he's going to run a third term. He will not run a third term. The only way he would stay is if he orchestrates an illegal coup. So they're only saying that, his supporters, so he doesn't appear as a lame duck. Obviously, the people around him, his closest supporters, I mean his team, people like J.D. Vance and the folks backing Trump, the billionaires, they don't care if he lives or dies. They just want his policies to continue via Vance or whoever, what other figurehead they can put in place. Okay, so let me just add to this. You saw that was net approval, but let's look deep into a red state, Iowa. And there was a piece here in the New York Times, and I'm just giving you a photo and an excerpt. This is a farmer named Matt Wyatt. He voted for Donald Trump. He farms 1,500 acres of corn and soybeans in Hudson, Iowa. And he doesn't want a bailout from Washington. As he said, he wants to have markets for his products. This is about legacy. This is about family tradition. This is a way of life. In this article in the New York Times, these farmers, these soybean farmers, for example, are deeply worried because they have connections to buyers in China. Folks there fly over to Asia to make the connections for purchasing. And when that comes to a grinding halt and buyers in China make connections to Argentina, those relationships become eroded. It's like any other business, any other relationship. Momentum is on your side. Rebuilding this will not be easy. And there's no indication that Donald Trump is going to figure it out or that China will fall for his bullshit. Because China is now stepping up. It's already a world power. And it has more patience than Donald Trump or even America has. And even Canada, other nations where we have very strong trade relationships are turning to other parties. Okay, so the good news is people are catching on to his approach. But the bad news, as I said, is he's going to move faster. Now, here's the deal, friends, and you heard it here first. Donald Trump has never really supported so-called MAGA, Make America Great Again. That slogan is a dog whistle to a kind of authoritarian white supremacy from the past, that slogan. And you know this if you've paid attention, that he was not the first person who had that. And it harkens to a different era. And it's not about making America great again, actually. But that's not Donald Trump's actual goal. Donald Trump's plan is, and again, I just coined this morning, MF. Now, you might think, Jennifer, so early in the morning, profanity. No, that's your dirty mind, MF. MF stands for me first and more. MF agenda, the me first agenda, as well as MFFFF, the me first, my friends and family first agenda. Donald Trump has the MF agenda, me first, and then my friends and family. That's his agenda. It's an MF agenda. It is self-dealing, smash and grab, and build my dynasty agenda all the way down. So we see that. Now, here's the deal. Someone like that, you might think can't be stopped, but he can. He is not inevitable. We had 7 million people show up in the streets on October 18th, and it's not just the streets. We're seeing some good moves in the courts. And let me just tell you, and I have clips, and I have video clips, and I have slides for you, but I'm giving you the whole picture. Even though Donald Trump has his MF, me first, and my friends and family first agenda going, we have smart lawyers and brave governors and even some brave members of Congress on the Democratic side, not Republicans, who are fighting back. And I want to tell you that next week is the week to watch. Why do I say this? Because next week, there are going to be several cases in court. Specifically, I'm talking about next Tuesday and next Wednesday. These are super big days, not just at the US Supreme Court, but elsewhere. And we are going to see, and I'm going to dig into this, 3 very important events. There's one at the polls, and I'm talking about 2 at the courts. Okay. So, 2 at the courts. So at the polls, as you may know, there are many states that have mayoral elections this year. So for example, New York City, and also where I live in Detroit, they are holding their election on Tuesday for mayor, right? And I believe that this will be a bit of a proxy. So November 4th, a week from tomorrow, we are going to see a showdown in New York City between Zohran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo. And I'm not just talking about 2 men. I'm talking about 2 diametrically opposed ideas about how power should be wielded and on whose benefit. And you got to go out and vote if you're a New Yorker, if you're a Detroiter, if you're in any city. Nothing is guaranteed. But I want to show you a photo that kind of filled my heart. Let's see if I can show you this. This is a stadium in Queens, an arena in Queens last night, where there was a rally for Zohran Mamdani. And at that rally, hold on one second. At that rally, I'm going to show you that in a second. We had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is obviously a member of Congress, Bernie Sanders, member of the Senate, celebrities, others out there in support of what Mamdani stands for. And what I love about this is in his Blue Sky post, he said, "Good evening from Queens, New York is not for sale." So we shall see how that goes. Okay. Now, also, though, happening on Tuesday are elections in New Jersey and California. Remember, California has a really important proposition on the agenda, where the people can vote to decide whether there is redistricting. So this is a ballot measure known as Proposition 50. This is where Gavin Newsom encouraged, and the state legislature passed a plan to get this plan to redistrict, which would give numerous new seats to Democrats in response to what is happening in other states. Okay, so this is unfortunately a race to the bottom in terms of nationwide people choosing their own members of Congress and the Senate, members of Congress, these districts. But at this point, you cannot disarm, because this is an attempt to gerrymander, to orchestrate more seats for Republicans. This is what started, and now Democrats are fighting back now. So what you should know, though, is in response to this, and the Justice Department, and this is a piece I'm going to share with you. I'm going to put this in the chat right now so you can see it. And I'm going to bring this up. This is the bad news, right? The Justice Department is now they've now decided to, under Donald Trump, to monitor elections in California and New Jersey. What does that mean? They're going to place monitors in those states where there are these key issues on the ballot. This was announced on Friday. And I'm not sure what this is going to look like. I do think this is a trial run. Brandon Richards, who is a spokesperson for Governor Newsom, said in a statement, quote, deploying these federal forces appears to be an intimidation tactic meant for one thing, to suppress the vote. Again, we have a good news story and a bad news story. The good news story is we're seeing things move toward more progressive candidates, toward candidates like Mondani, who has had enough of the klepto capitalism. And I say klepto because that is what has brought Donald Trump to power. Many people have had enough of that. They're seeing the MF agenda that Donald Trump and the entire Republican Party supports because they are not voting against it. Congress is not in session. Their leader is holding it back. They will not change. They will not budge in terms of appropriations. So the MF, the me first, the Donald Trump first, the MF, me first, my friends and family first agenda is not what America wants. And again, that's good. What's bad is Donald Trump knows that. And so he is going to force us to swallow that agenda is his intention. So that is something to look out for on Tuesday. What happens in New Jersey and California? And then, of course, where there are no election monitors, what will happen in New York? So that's happening on Tuesday. What's also happening on Tuesday, my friends, is Greg Bovino. You may have heard of him. He is part of Customs and Border Patrol. He was a guy who was in California doing the ICE crackdowns and also is now out in Illinois. He has apparently violated a federal court order at least once by throwing tear gas canisters into a crowd when he was ordered not to use those tactics and not in response to any exigent circumstance or violence from the crowd. I'm going to show you that clip right now so you can see. And this is Mary Gay Scanlon talking about that. So he's going to have to show up in court and answer for himself. So that's also happening this Tuesday. Okay, let's play this.
Awful lot about the fact that despite what the ICE agents and CBP are claiming out there, when they have to go to court, when they actually have to produce facts, they're unable to do so. So we have courts being increasingly skeptical of the lies that are coming from this administration about whether or not there's rebellion in the streets and whether or not the people they are detaining are dangerous or had resisted. While we were there, Bovino, the Customs and Border Patrol officer who's been in charge of some of the most outrageous raids in Los Angeles and now in Chicago, he was filmed lobbing tear gas canisters into a crowd, and there were allegations, and I think there's a recording of him saying to someone who was recording what was going on, "What, are you threatening me?" So deliberately trying to provoke a confrontation.
So this is really important, right? We need to see what will happen to him. Is he going to continue to disobey court orders? Super important. Now, there's one more thing on the keep an eye on next week front. On Wednesday, the United States Supreme Court is going to hear the case involving the case challenging Donald Trump's tariffs. Now, when I say tariffs, I mean import taxes. These are taxes on us imposed on goods imported from countries across the globe. And you might remember that these taxes that are being challenged, these tariffs, I can call them tariff taxes or just import taxes, but these taxes, he is claiming that he has the legal authority to do this. Because, by the way, Congress, under the U.S. Constitution, has the power of the purse, This is taxing and spending. It's Congress. And Donald Trump is claiming that despite that, he can, because, let me back up. Congress has the power to tax. Donald Trump claims that there is a statute enacted by Congress called IEPA, International Economic Emergencies Powers Act, under which Congress delegated to him this authority. The problem is IEPA, this International Economic Emergencies Powers Act, has never been used by any president for tariffs, number one. And number two, the tariffs, these import taxes that he is imposing, he is not publicly stating there are international emergencies. I mean, what he says in his briefs, I mean, that's another thing. But these are not economic emergencies. And this is where we're going to get back to the war with Ronald Reagan's ghost and his new war with his new war with Canada. So let me first play for you the latest on this. Okay, so there is a case. So I want to talk to you about what's going on and why I think he's going to lose this case, notwithstanding the makeup of this Supreme Court. So let me play for you first the ad that has set in motion a series of events that will show you why Donald Trump should lose this case. So you may have seen that the Prime Minister of the province of Ontario, Canada, placed an ad, and it's all over US television, taking excerpts from a speech Ronald Reagan gave in 1987, where Ronald Reagan, who was at the time still president of the United States, expressed the then conservative value of free trade and expressed his opposition to tariffs, import taxes. This is an excerpt. It is, you can look at the whole speech. It's an honest representation of what Reagan had to say. And let me play this for you. This was, I think, on Friday that it first came out.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
So this really angered Donald Trump, to say the least. He freaked out, and on Friday morning, just laid into Canada and said he was going to not negotiate with them, and he was going to increase taxes on imports. I think increase them by 10% more. So he basically, because he was angry about this ad, which was truthful, and I'm not endorsing the ad, I'm just telling you what he was angry about. He's angry about this Reagan ad, says it misrepresents Reagan. The Reagan Library claims that they had no right to use it, which is funny because that's in the public domain because it was, anyway, that's a whole other issue. Donald Trump's flipped out and he decides to retaliate against Canada by creating a tax that affects us. And that doesn't sound like an economic emergency. That sounds like Donald Trump is butthurt. That sounds like Donald Trump is a me first president and doesn't like to be challenged, doesn't like to have his people told the truth. So let's look at what Donald Trump said when he was asked about this on his way to Asia.
Ontario said it's going to pull that Reagan tariff ad come this Monday, but it's airing it during his first two World Series games.
Well, you know, it's a crooked ad. I heard he's airing it. Canada, that's why I pulled everything. With Canada, they did a crooked ad. They knew it was Ronald Reagan loved tariffs. What they did is really dishonest. And I heard they were pulling the ad. I didn't know they were putting it on a little bit more. They could have pulled it tonight.
They're going to pull it Monday.
Well, that's dirty playing. But I can play dirtier than they can, you know? Really, very dishonest.
Okay. At one point, he claimed it was AI. So the thing is, Donald Trump didn't love tariffs. I'm not saying Ronald Reagan didn't love tariffs. And I'm not saying he was consistent with his trade policy or anything else. But it's a flat out lie that this was made with AI. And it also, when you say I'm imposing these because I didn't like the ad they put out, that's obviously not the authority Congress gave the president. Let me share for you Professor Justin Wolfers from University of Michigan talk about this. And so again, the bad news is we have to pay higher taxes because Donald Trump had his fees hurt. But the good news is tariffs are pretty low in Canada anyway. Let me play you Professor Wolfers here.
Can't do anything but tell it to you straight. This Canada thing is literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The Canadians ran an advertisement showing Ronald Reagan being against tariffs. Guess what? Ronald Reagan was against tariffs, as has every recent Republican president for years. It upset the president. He thought the Canadians were lying. That's simply not true. President Reagan hated tariffs. And so he said he's going to stop negotiations with the Canadians. The good news is, so it's really dumb. The really good news is that actually most of our trade with Canada right now is effectively at very, very low tariff rates. So if nothing changes, things are actually going to be okay.
Okay, so I mean, I'm glad that Wolfers is giving us sort of the bottom line there, but everything isn't actually okay around here. And we'll get to that in a moment. Now, here I want to share with you, this was from Friday morning. This is what Donald Trump said. Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Reagan did not like tariffs when actually he loved tariffs. This is insane. Of course. So let's talk, though, about the case that's coming up directly on point. So let's go back to, because this is happening on Wednesday. And I'm going to suggest, so the oral argument is Wednesday, where you should go if you want to hear, so-called hear it live, is only one place. You can see it live. Well, not only one place, but you can see live blogging of oral argument via the SCOTUS blog. That's one place to hear it. After the argument, the court puts up in the afternoon a transcript you can get from their website. And then I think by the end of the week, usually, or maybe, I'm not sure how many days later, you can actually listen. There will be an audio recording. So I want to give you something on this to make you, dig a little bit into the weeds on this slightly. So this is, the oral argument will be this next Wednesday, the 5th. And the case, just to be clear, is consolidated. So it's called Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump. It was consolidated with another case called Trump versus VOS Selections. Now, why are these names in different orders? Let me kind of explain that to you. In Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump, obviously, Learning Resources is the petitioner in this case because they lost at the Court of Appeals below. In contrast, in the other case, it's part of this, VOS Selections is the respondent because they won. But these cases were both cases that were initially brought by a group of companies, et cetera, and states, I think. Learning Resources is the lead plaintiff in one. VOS Selections was the lead plaintiff in the other. So what are these cases about? These cases are about small businesses and states asking the Supreme Court to uphold orders that struck down Trump's tariffs. What you can also know is that there are so-called friend of the court briefs that have been filed, and in those briefs, amicus briefs or amici, one of them is Gavin Newsom, who has weighed in. Let me just blow this up. I think I can do this. Gavin Newsom is filing a brief in support of that case. Now, what I want to share with you, and I think I have this. Hold on one second. I don't think I need to show you a screen, but what I want to tell you is about what this case is about, so you're prepared for next week. You might already remember, and why I think Donald Trump will lose. Okay, so we have these small businesses, as I said, and states asking the United States Supreme Court to uphold the courts below. In other words, to say that Donald Trump's tariffs that he imposed when in February through these executive orders, these plaintiffs, these businesses and states want the court to say that they're unconstitutional, or at least on any theory, uphold courts below striking them down. Now, there are two types of tariffs that are being challenged. One type were the tariffs that specifically apply to goods from Canada, China, and Mexico. And Donald Trump's argument backing those types of tariffs were that these import taxes on Canada, Mexico, and China were in retaliation for his claim that they have failed to stop the flow of fentanyl into our country. So that is one bucket that is being challenged. The other bucket of tariffs being challenged are those tariffs that are called reciprocal tariffs. So those range from 10 to 50%. And those are products from virtually all countries. And remember that this was that crazy ass math that didn't make sense, that Donald Trump claimed they were reciprocal, but they weren't. Like, okay, if, Narnia, remember this whole thing with Narnia? If Narnia was imposing an import tax on soybeans coming from the United States of 10%, it wasn't that Donald Trump then said, okay, when we import, Turkish Delight candy from Narnia, now it's 10%. That wasn't what he did. He looked at the total trade imbalance and came up with a number, which is very weird for a number of reasons. And the way it shook out made absolutely no sense, because it just made no sense. Just trust me, I don't want to revisit that. So these are import taxes that we have to pay, or that that businesses importing goods from all over the world between 10 and 50% on virtually all products. Again, two buckets. One bucket of everything from China, Mexico, and Canada, and another bucket because of the argument that they're not stopping drug trafficking, and then the other bucket just across the board of so-called reciprocal tariffs. Again, it would not be lawful. The president does not get to impose taxes. Congress has to enact laws that he would sign, but he used this hook of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And that statute, and we've looked at it before, allows a president to respond to what's known as a quote unquote unusual and extraordinary threat if he declares a national emergency. And when there is, you can take action. So usually what IEPA is used for is sanctions on foreign countries, right? During war, like sanctions on doing business with Iraq during the Iraq War and so on. Okay, so who are the plaintiffs in this case? I mentioned that these are businesses and states. So in the Learning Resources case, this was Learning Resources is one business, and Hand to Mind, spelled H-A-N-D to M-I-N-D. These two companies sued, right? Sued, arguing that these tariffs would cost them $100 million. So the import taxes that they have to pay, Learning Resources and Hand to Mind, right? They said that these would cost them $100 million. That's more, $100 million in 2025, more than what they had to pay previously. So that's not great, right? Okay. And so what else, right? We had, what happened next? So what they argued, these two businesses, is that Donald Trump did not have the power under IEEPA to impose these. And what happened is a judge, a U.S. District Court judge, agreed with them and said, you are right. This was Judge Rudolph Contreras in Washington, D.C., the U.S. District Court for the Federal District of Washington, and said, yeah, you don't have this. Then the case went directly to the United States Supreme Court in June. And basically, they asked the judges to weigh in. They skipped over the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. They didn't wait. They just went right to the Supreme Court. Now, there are other lawsuits filed in the Court of International Trade, and one was by 5 small businesses, and the second by 12 states. And the court also agreed with this court, the National Court of International Trade, agreed that IEEPA didn't give Donald Trump the power. Okay, so we end up that when Donald Trump, so he loses, right? You just heard, he loses in the Learning Resources and Hand to Mind case. He loses at the Court of International Trade, and then but Donald Trump appeals to the Federal Circuit, and the Federal Circuit agreed also that Trump did not have that power. So I'm kind of, that is what's going on now. There is another case, a case involving small businesses. This was led by VOS Selections. And in this case, those businesses argued that hundreds of statutes grant the power to regulate, and none has ever granted the president the power to tax. And so that's kind of what's going on in this case. I'm really excited. I think this is going to be a significant case because it's an intersection of money law and power. We need to have our eyes on that. So again, on Tuesday, we have 2 things going on. We've got these very important elections, including in New York City and New Jersey and California, and the worry about having election monitors in New Jersey and California. We also have on Tuesday, Greg Bonvino having to show up and deal with answering to a judge after he violated a court order. Also, he has apparently lied, claiming that rocks were thrown at him. That's not what the camera shows. And we shall see what happens in court. Then, of course, we have Wednesday at the United States Supreme Court. So all of this is exciting, except that's at the high level, right? On the ground, things are getting, this is my Zen thing. That's good. This is bad. Here's the bad thing. The money, let me say this differently. Donald Trump has decided to stop providing funds to SNAP programs, This is a supplemental nutritional programs. This used to be called food stamps. Now people get this deposited through their EBT, through a card. The way SNAP funding works is there actually is a reserve that the federal government could be using right now, despite the shutdown, to send the states, because the states get the money from the feds, to send them the money. The money for October was sent, but of course, because we have the government shutdown, Donald Trump has decided to retaliate against the Democrats for not bowing to his wishes and demanding negotiations. And they're not going to be sending, as far as we know, any money to the states on November 1st. What does this mean? Well, it depends on what state you are in. Many states, at least 38 of them, are saying we're not going to be doing anything. We don't have funds sitting around to pay out SNAP. Now, depending on where you live, and you may know this because you may be receiving SNAP, every state pays it out differently. Some states pay it out based on the first letter of your last name. Some states use your social security numbers. There's some use a different ID number, but often states don't give it to every person at the same day. It could be the 1st and the 15th of the month. It could be the first half of the month, and they just put it out day by day. It could be all kinds of different ways. So people are expecting, beginning this Saturday, money to be on this card that they use to buy their groceries, to buy, tampons, to buy cleaning supplies, to buy whatever they need at a grocery store. It supplements their grocery budget. We're talking about over 40 million people across the country beginning November 1st, not having the money that was going to show up anywhere between November 1st in the mid to end of the month, depending, again, when your state pays you. This is going to be awful for those people, those children. And let's be clear, apparently 2/3 of the people getting SNAP are children, the elderly, or people with disabilities. There are of able-bodied people who are getting this. That's that chunk. Half of them actually have jobs, but their jobs don't pay them above a poverty essentially rate, or there's a threshold at which you can get SNAP, and jobs aren't paying enough. So the SNAP program, in part, subsidizes businesses that don't pay a living wage. This is going to be terrible, and it's going to be painful. And this is where we are. What's also happening, and I think it's going to hurt small businesses, and hopefully people are stepping up in their communities, in their places of worship, at food banks to help provide. What would make the most sense, which I've seen people talk about, is what the Black Panthers used to do. Democrats should, those running for office and those electeds, should be actually leading the charge to set up food banks and voter registration for people. If you are a mayor, if you are in the state legislature, if you're a member of Congress or a senator and you are a Democrat, get off your ass and get your face in front of a camera and announce where people can get food. This is basic. This is depriving people of food and nutrition deliberately. That is what Donald Trump is doing. The money is there. He's claiming he can't release it because there might be an emergency, like he cares about emergencies. One more bad thing that's happening, of course, is I can talk about how Bovino has to go before a federal judge on Tuesday, but you know damn well on the ground, we're seeing more and more violent attacks on immigrants and also U.S. citizens. And I want to show you this clip of ICE arresting a U.S. citizen.
What do you mean overstay?
An overstay.
I don't know what that is.
Where
Dude.
were you born? And don't lie to me.
I'm from California, dude.
Don't lie to me. Where were you born?
California.
So we're going to take you in and verify your information.
No, you're not, dude.
Yes,
No, you're not.
Yes, we are.
I haven't done anything wrong.
You just told me that's you who I have here.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's you. You just told me that's you.
But that doesn't make me an illegal or anything.
All right.
Turn around, you're going to get the dog.
I haven't done
We're
anything.
going to put you in cuffs, or you're going to get the dog.
So he was put in custody. He threatened him with a violent dog. I don't know if you saw, but there was a neighborhood in Illinois where kids and families were out in Halloween costumes and such. And, ICE or DHS or whoever it was comes into this neighborhood and people are shouting at them like, go away. And they threw tear gas at, around with children in costumes, terrifying them. This is what our government's doing. So I want to say we're resisting. The courts are going to hold the line. Yeah, this is an authoritarian nightmare, but there's hope. But I don't ever want to diminish what is actually happening on the ground. Now, I got one more thing before I get to Crazy Town. Donald Trump always leans into the big lie. And it's not just the big lie about 2020. I want to make it clear that Donald Trump repeatedly, though, lied in the lead up to before the 2020 election and after he lost, repeatedly claiming, as you know, that he had actually won. And, there was case after case after case after case, and there wasn't a single one that showed that there was election interference or election interference that could have changed the outcome. We know that there were so many lies that even Fox News had to pay out a shit ton of money around lying about electronic voting. We know this. We even know that Bill Barr, as Attorney General, refused to participate in these lies. Donald Trump is already repeating that lie and setting up yet another. Donald Trump's plan is, if he doesn't win, to say that he did. So let's look at what he is saying. So this was yesterday afternoon. And he said, again, the lie, the 2020 presidential election being rigged and stolen is a far bigger scandal than with the NBA. And he said, when a crooked moron became our president, we now know everything. So everything's projection. Donald Trump, of course, is the crooked moron. I hope the DOJ pursues with as much gusto as benefiting the biggest scandal in American history. And again, now he's saying about the upcoming midterms, no mail-in, early voting, yes to voter ID, and so on and so on and so on. Now, the federal government has no say in how states manage their elections. And of course, this is why we are seeing him try to do what he can do to intimidate voters. And now we switch to the good side. I do think this backfires. I do think it doesn't work. It doesn't work for Donald Trump to, essentially, let me say it differently. The more aggressive he gets, the more motivated we get to turn out the vote. We need to stay organized. We need to understand it's going to get worse before it gets worse. But what I saw us do with 7 million people in October tells me, and what we see happen next Tuesday will tell me more about where we can go with this. Now, I am going to get to Crazy Town now. I've got a double scoop for you. Here we go. This is going to be good. Okay. So let's start first. Everyone's cosplaying. We've got Dr. Don. Let's see what advice Dr. Don has for us. Yes, Donald Trump. Now, this is crazier than you think. So let me break this down. Donald Trump just said, pregnant women don't use Tylenol unless absolutely necessary. Don't give Tylenol to your young child for virtually any reason. Break up the MMR shot into 3 totally separate shots, not mixed. Take chicken pea shot separately. Take hepatitis B shot at 12 years old or older. And importantly, take vaccine in 5 separate medical visits. President DJT. Okay. Did I tell you he is a moron? Now, what you may not know is that there is no 3 separate MMR shots. Let me just make this clear. MMR, you probably know, stands for measles, mumps, and rubella. In the United States, you can't just go in and say, I'd like my child to have the rubella shot or the measles shot or mumps on its own. It doesn't fucking exist in America. Secondly, where the hell did Dr. Don get his medical degree? I would actually like to know. Okay? Now, I have got one more. And if Donald Trump is cosplaying being a doctor, you'll never guess what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is cosplaying as. I think you might know where this is headed. Let me share with you that clip. So Secretary Bessent was on the shows, the Sunday shows this weekend, and he was asked about the plight of farmers in America. And as you know, Donald Trump is giving $40 billion to bail out Argentina. It looks like the president of Argentina, that his party is going to have enough sway that he will be able to stay in office, or he would be able to stay in office, that he'll be able to get his agenda done, and therefore Donald Trump is there to the rescue. Let's listen to Scott Bessent.
I did mean the second term. I know they have met before. I did mean the second term. I know they have met before. The president has also said he does want our farmers to be taken care of. You did mention that China has been boycotting American soybeans, and American farmers have really suffered. Do you see a real light at the end of the tunnel there? They may allow soybeans again?
Well, Martha, in case you don't know it, I'm actually a soybean farmer, so I have felt this pain too. And there are a couple of things happening here. One, the Chinese have substantially dropped their purchases to almost zero, so they unfortunately have been using American farmers who are amongst President Trump's biggest supporters. I think he had more than 90% support. And then this was one of the biggest crops in 20 or 30 years, so it was a perfect storm. But I think we have addressed the farmers' concerns, and I'm not going to get ahead of the president.
I think we have addressed the farmers' concern. I don't think you have. We were just earlier in the show reading about the Iowa farmers. No one wants bailouts. They want a business. And as for you, I am a soybean farmer. Really? Really, Farmer Scott? I don't think so. Let's take a look. Here's Farmer Scott. This is Farmer Scott, who owns, I think, 1,000 acres. I don't know what he owns. Doesn't go out there and dig in the ground. Let's look at what he also has owned. And I love this. Amanda Moore says, please, sir, I'm just a small soybean farmer and a common man. On the left is a home that he had in, I think, South Carolina. And on the right is his Washington, D.C. home. What I understand about his home in South Carolina. This shouldn't really shock you, is that apparently that home in South Carolina was previously, if I understand it correctly, a plantation. It is the pink house is in South Carolina that you were just looking at, and the one with the pool is in DC. His South Carolina plantation home was owned by a former slaveholder. It was built in the 19th century, and apparently he bought the house in 2016. He put it up for sale in 2024, last November, for $22 million. So I am sure that he can feel the pain of the ordinary farmer, just like himself. Now, there's so much more to talk about, but we'll get to that tomorrow. I have a special guest for us tomorrow, Charles Gaba. He's been on the show before. He is an expert, as you may remember, on healthcare funding, the Affordable Care Act, and so on. And he can talk to us about what's likely to happen to Americans who are already seeing huge spikes in their planned premiums for their health insurance that would begin in January. So thanks for listening, and I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. And with that, thank you, guys.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show, where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.